Can you folks hear me? Good afternoon. I got Cindy, Clara, and Jacqueline. Good afternoon. If somebody could type and let me know you could hear this. Okay, Jacqueline Wise, thank you very much. Claire's typing loud and clear. Thank you, Clara. I'm sorry, folks, I'm a little late. Um, but I'm glad I'm here and I'm glad you're here. So let's get started because time is money and money is time, and we'll try to keep this under an hour and a half. And I hope you don't fall asleep. And good afternoon. My name is Ken Alligat. I'm a person in long-term recovery from alcohol and drugs since November 30th of 1988, which puts me in about 26 and a half years, but who's counting? And it's really good to be here today with you, and thank you for your interest in recovery housing. Recovery housing, as you know, is really important, not only here in Little Connecticut, but across the nation. We get calls every week here, and there's just not enough beds to go around. And that doesn't mean the winter. That also means in the warm months. Actually, right now we're getting bombarded with calls for folks seeking recovery housing, and especially for females. There's just not enough homes for female residents, and we can't make anybody open up a recovery house, but we certainly like to keep promoting this in hopes that folks do. And what we're seeing lately is folks with a lot of extra real estate who have lost a loved one due to an overdose, fatal overdose from alcohol and or drugs, and now they want to give back. And they ask me, how can I give back? I want to get involved in recovery housing. So we're more than happy to keep this little training going and help them out and help you out as much as we can. This is a real on the ground, type of a 101 type of a training to for folks interested. And I did a face-to-face training yesterday, and I had a dozen folks show up, and some of them are already in the business, and they're coming with their managers, and that's great because they're growing and they want everybody to know what they're doing, how it goes, and but so I'm really happy to again to be here today with you. Next slide, please. 1 second. Okay. So what you're classified as a privately owned recovery home. A privately owned recovery home. That's what you want to be. You're not a hospital. You're not a facility. You're not a treatment center. In this little arena here, you are a privately owned recovery home. And you have no medical staff, things like that. What you will have is a live-in manager, preferably someone in somewhat of long-term recovery, someone who knows how to stand tall and say no. Um, you your residents come from many sources: treatment providers, Department of Corrections, psychiatrists, friends and relatives, other friends in recovery, and so on. And the recovery house revenue comes from the residents' payment of rent. Now, in the land of perfect, the owners tell me across the board it's nice to have private pay. There's not a whole lot of programs that offer like access to recovery and basic needs programs. There's not a whole lot going on. If there is, we all know it's only temporary, maybe 60 days of rent assistance, but it's a big if the clients even qualify. They have to be absolutely destitute. No, they can't even have a transportation. They can't even have $300 in their pocket, or they don't qualify for these programs. So it's very difficult. It's very difficult. And we don't want to keep sending everybody saying, well, there's a shelter down the street. That's not the answer. That's not the answer. The answer is support recovery core values. Hopefully, folks can get to work and build their confidence, their self-esteem, and be able to pay you the weekly rent. In this arena, most of the homeowners charge by the rent. There are agencies that charge folks monthly, um, monthly rent, but most are weekly rent, and a lot of them don't offer food. But there are programs out there that are pretty pricey that do offer external treatment or counseling. Let me say that again: counseling and food and transportation to meetings and things like that. But that could be very costly. You're not a halfway house. That's a Department of Corrections, which is a halfway house. There is such a thing. We're also trying to change the language in the recovery house, in the whole recovery community. You know, words like transitional living, sober house, three-quarter house, things like that, living centers. What you want to do is tease in the word recovery, okay? A recovery house that supports recovery core values. And again, you're not a hospital based recovery facility. Usually there are no employees working for the recovery house, but your manager um, will live there 7/24, 365 to manage the house. Next slide. It's a great opportunity. I get a lot of folks, like I said earlier, that are not in recovery, but they want to give back, they want to help out, and that's great. You know, they're real generous people and they truly want to help people in recovery. Having had some type of a relation or experience with a family member or friend that may have suffered from the disease of addiction and alcoholism. So they want to give back. They have the real estate, they have a little bit of money, they have a little bit of time, but once they get established in the business, they're going to hire someone, a recovery manager that's in recovery, that will take care of the house and just be a power of example throughout the house and foster good recovery. It takes significant time and effort too, you know, especially getting started. But you know, year two, three, folks tell me that they're flying pretty good, and they get a great personal satisfaction of you know, it's that win-win. You're helping people, and it's a feel good at the end of the day. So everybody's happy. It's not an easy business. I'm not going to say that. I get my share of calls every month from people who are pretty unhappy, and we don't in Connecticut. We do not. There's no state or federal oversight of recovery housing, so that's why we formed a coalition in Connecticut, which I'll get to later today in this presentation. Next slide, please. So when you're for your pre-admission criteria, you'll do a telephone interview first. Someone will call you, you're all set, you're open for business, and your manager will interview the person on phone. If they pass that interview, so to speak, then you would set up a face-to-face interview where the prospect would come in and sit with you. And some of the owners actually like being involved as well as the manager. They want to see, they want to get a sense of who is coming into their home. And they also want to take a minute with the person, if the person is a potential resident, to tell them that, you know, what you're going to get here is recovery. We're going to support your recovery, make sure, you know, you're getting to your meetings, your medical issues are taken care of, all that kind of stuff. You're getting your nutrition, all that kind of stuff that the owners want to support, as well as the manager that lives in the house. So again, where it says pre-screening interview, to discuss the recovery core values and perspectives, and you're setting the tone for future relationships between the candidate and the homeowner. And we'll get into the formal admissions process, the paperwork, which is really important, your agreement. There are agreements online. You could find agreements if you go to anybody's website. Some of these recovery housing owners have their own website, and you could look at what they're doing. and look at their contracts and kind of mock your own agreement. It's pretty simple. And if you need assistance in that, please let me know, and my contact information will be available to you at the end here. Next slide, please. Here's my favorite: house rules support recovery. Based on the homeowner's personal values, again, in maintaining recovery. It's the, if the owner and the manager, they're on the same page. They both want goodness. They want a healthy, safe, affordable recovery home for their clients. And it starts from the top, and all that trickles down through the rest of the business. And the homeowner's reputation is directly affected by the implementation of house rules. You want to be known as a tough love place. You don't want a lot of this ducking and dodging and lying and cheating and all that stuff. We also have minimum standards, which everyone's using pretty much cross country, which you could find the minimum standards at ccard.us. I'll get into that a little bit later. It's basically what everybody's doing across country, minimum standards for recovery houses. You have your common areas within the house, like the kitchen, the living room, the bathroom. There should be no more than 5 people per one bathroom, things like that, standards. You should have a microwave in the kitchen. You should have a 4-slice toaster, not a toaster oven. We're finding that toaster ovens could be a fire hazard. Somebody puts something in the toaster oven, they put it on high, their phone rings, and they go in the other room and they forgot about the toaster oven. So although a lot of that stuff has safety features on it today, it's not required. Refrigeration, a lot of the houses have more than one refrigerator, things like that. So those are pretty basic things that I'll point to you on findrecoveryhousing.com, which I'll show you a little bit later on. You want to really review the rules with your resident and make them repeat back to you that if I drink and or use drugs, or if I create disruptive behavior, or if I have knives or guns, I cannot stay there. I have to leave the house. And it's not your job to find out what happens to that resident. Now, if the resident is using drugs and alcohol, and you do an on-demand drug test, and they may fess up to you before you even take the drug kit out of the closet. It'll save you $11. But there's a lot of power in that, standing in front of someone and saying, we think you're using. We got to drug screen you, but they'll probably admit to you that they're using. All right, so at that point, you ask the person, do you want to go to treatment right now? And that's the least you can do. That would maybe be the manager and maybe a couple other men or women, depends on what house it is, and then get that person to treatment right away. Now, personal belongings, some folks will hold it for 1 week. Some folks will hold personal belongings for 30 days. If the person leaves, relapses and leaves on their own, or gets terminated out of the house, make sure that that line item is in your agreement, that if you leave here because of relapse or for whatever reason, or you get terminated, we could only hold your personal belongings in a storage room, like a basement, for only X amount of days. And that's up to you. But make sure you reflect that in the agreement. And the rule assessment should be done to ensure effectiveness, and make them sign the agreement. Make them sign the house rules. And the one thing about house rules, next slide please, is you could have the best house rules in the world, but you have to enforce them. That's the magic word. You have to enforce your house rules, and that comes from your manager. And that's what I meant when I said earlier, the manager is a person that's going to have a real, some tough love, and someone that's going to be able to say no, N-O, to the residents, because I know as a person in myself in recovery, I manipulated people to get what I wanted. I would tell them what they would want to hear so I could do the duck and dodge and sneak around. And that's all behaviors that has to be changed eventually. So here we are again, house rules support recovery continued. Establish a pattern of personal and financial responsibility. That means if I'm gonna start to grow up, and I'm gonna start taking responsibility and accountability for my behavior. If you tell me rent is due every Friday night at 6 p.m., then I should not be coming to you at 7:30 on Friday night or 6 o'clock on Saturday morning without my rent. I need to be responsible, and I need to start to grow up. And at 61 years old, I'm still growing up, kids. Okay, and you create a supportive peer environment. What is that? Well, once in a while, maybe once a week or twice a week or once a month, whatever your model you choose for your model for your house. The residents can get groceries and create a nice dinner together and work together, and you're fostering that community within the house and folks getting together and getting along. So it's really, really great. Reward system for earning privileges. This is not money. Try to stay away from any money rewards. It's a slippery slope. We've heard the horror stories across the nation about folks getting involved in reward systems, including money. What this means is if a lot of the homeowners start with double rooms. So me and another guy will stay in the room together. This helps us to avoid isolation. Early in recovery, we know from studies that folks will isolate. And another thing I got to throw in too, be careful about putting televisions in rooms. That could create isolation also. That is your choice. But as long as the common area, the living room, has a TV, you're fine. But you do not need to put them in the bedroom. So let's say I'm there 10 months. I'm a good boy. I I go to work every day. I pay my rent on time. I'm going to my meetings. I'm going to my 12-step meetings, my Bible study. I'm being really good. Everybody has assigned chores weekly or monthly. And the manager comes to me and says, "Hey, Ken, we got a single room coming up in 2 months. And you're going to be, let's say I was celebrating a year of sobriety in 2 months. And we're going to have a single room. Would you like to move into the single room?" And I think everybody would like that. So that's an example of a reward system and privileges, something like that. And you could be creative and do your own thing. And we'll get into some more creative things with marketing your house too in a few minutes. Um, Develop family atmosphere and team approach. Again, create community. A lot of folks never had this. They never sat down together at a meal. A lot of houses do holiday. They buy groceries or they give the manager some money to go out and get groceries for Thanksgiving, for Christmas, for New Year's, whatever holidays, it's up to you. Nothing's chiseled in granite. Again, the residents work together. Somebody makes the turkey, somebody makes the potatoes, somebody makes the salad, somebody makes the bread pudding. So everybody's involved. There's some music going on in the house. There's great conversation. We got the coffee pot on. Life's not bad, And I get a sense of self-esteem starts to come up a little bit. My confidence increases. Things like that. So again, and the bottom bullet on this slide is really important to protect safety. Safety is number one, bar none. Safety is the most important thing for your residents. They must be safe at all times. Next slide. Okay, some house rule minimums. On the left column, regular attendance at 12-step meetings, faith-based or other recovery programs, a sponsor within a designated time frame. Now, that's got to be your call. You and your managers, you work that out. We don't want to say, well, Ken needs to get a sponsor within 2 weeks or 30 days. You just got to have a little bit have your finger on the pulse of your residents, because you're going to have your house meetings and check in with them. How's it going? Do you need a little bit more time to find a sponsor? But try not to let that go for a year, because all that is part of breaking out of the isolation, being able to open up to others, because a lot of us have issues. We were not warm and fuzzy, and we want to break down those walls and be able to ask for help. Weekly rent payments, full-time employment. In the land of perfect, everybody would be working 7 to 4:30 or 8 to 5. In the land of perfect, we have heard of cases that folks have a great job. They're working second or third shift. They make a reasonable amount of money. They have health benefits through their employer, but they're on second or third shift. What do you do with that? They went to treatment, the union saved their job, or the employer said, come on back when you get your life together. We're going to protect your job. You can come back. But I think what we are hearing is those are, it's going to happen. You might have somebody on a second or third shift, but you can make an arrangement with them and just let them know that, because they're on shift and they're going to be coming back home at midnight or in the morning, well, in the morning, everybody's going to be awake. But if they're going to be coming home at 1 a.m. from work, from second shift, then the manager will do on-demand drug screening. It'll be random. We don't want people thinking that they have to be, if they're on second shift or third shift, every time they come in Monday through Friday, that they're standing there with a drug cup wanting me to submit to a drug test. And we don't want that scenario, because that doesn't really foster independent living, which recovery housing it is independent living. However, there are standards and rules. But so have a little bit of leeway for the resident who's on that type of shift. Attendance at regular scheduled house meetings. This is an absolute, another one of those bar none. Have to have weekly house meetings. It's a really good way to check on everybody, see how they're doing. Watch the interactions, watch the body language. You'll hear the little innuendos like, I don't like the way you leave toothpaste all over the sink. Well, I don't like your deodorizer. It stinks. So, it's just a way for folks to vent, and kind of air it out with management facilitation, of course. And in the right column, we have curfew limitations, overnights, or visits. Now, no one in this business that I know of, that we know of, allows outsiders to sleep in the recovery house. No, absolutely no. I think that's a big mistake. We think it's a big mistake. However, your residents may get furloughed out for a weekend, for a holiday, to go see family. That's fine. That also is in your agreement. That's something that you and your residents work out with the understanding. When they come home, 99% of them, after a weekend, have to understand that they will submit to a drug test. Okay? It just makes sense. Especially the first 90 days. You may not be so broad and have so much leeway with your folks that are in your home for the first 30 to 90 days. Keep in mind, we know that they're all early in recovery, and there's a lot of emotions and there's a lot of feelings going on, and that's okay. But we just want to make sure they get the support that they need. So you might have that probation period. The reward system, again, you could do different things to reward folks, but not having money involved. So let's see. Yeah, on-demand drug or alcohol screening, that's fine. Notice of intent to vacate or remove of personal belongings. I mentioned it earlier. You could do, I met a guy yesterday, he said he does 7 days. If somebody's gone, 7 days. Make sure it's in your agreement. Another guy is doing 30 days. Give them a month to come and get their stuff. It goes in a big baggie and goes downstairs. What happens to the clothing? It usually gets donated to one of the charity boxes in your local area. Next slide, please. Okay, let's prepare for business. In preparing for your business in your paperwork side, on your admissions form, make sure you have an emergency contact info from your resident on that page, half page, full page, whatever. Make sure there's an emergency contact. You may need it someday. your house rules, your contract agreement, all the amenities, the rules, you're going to go over grievance policies. Excuse me. The grievances should go to the manager and really stop at the manager's level and not have to go to the owner of the house. We believe in our experience from a lot of these owners that it's usually things that are pretty harmless, like you took my parking spot, I'm ticked off, I'm complaining. Really things that aren't in, that important, but we want to treat it with a little bit of importance, if you know what I mean. Not to discount anyone's feelings or grievance. Bigger things like this house is full of drugs. Well, that'll soon come to light, and we'll find out pretty. You'll find out pretty quick if that's true. You want to have your discharge policy in place. Some folks use something called a sober deposit. If and it's in their agreement, it's spelled out in their agreement for X amount of dollars. Say, let's use $500. That's my sober deposit. And if I am there for 90 days in writing, I have to stay for 90 days. If I'm terminated or I leave on my own before 90 days, I lose the $500. Again, this is not mandatory. Um, and just have your discharge policy. And again, we could show you samples and we can talk about that later on. Next slide. Okay, preparing for business continued. On the left, this is your house manager level. On the right, there's the Oxford House, the democratically run. So on your left, you have the volunteer, usually receives free rent and or private room, at a discount between you and the manager. That's between that. In most cases, that's what we see. That the manager cuts a deal with, the owner cuts a deal with the manager on rent. The manager is also working a full-time job, hopefully, and is managing the house and probably gets somewhat of a discount. Again, that's up to you. That's between the owner and manager. The planning needs to be done to be sure the home continues to operate. The manager and the owner are on the same page. They have the same values, morals. What do they want? They want, again, a safe recovery house that supports recovery core values and safety. Safety, number one. So assist owner in maintaining safe recovery environment. Usually people in multiple years of recovery is a great manager. If you could find them, they're out there. They are out there. I would shoot for more than 1 year, probably 3 to 5 years of recovery. That's a model, kind of what we're seeing. Yesterday, I met a gentleman that's 20 years in recovery. He's an old timer, and he's just got a brand new job running a recovery house in West Hartford, Connecticut. And he's really excited. His wife has passed on. He's all alone. So for him, this is an ideal opportunity. So there are different case scenarios out there that will work. And sometimes the first one doesn't work out, but it'll all work out for you. And you just network with folks that when you're getting ready to hire your recovery house manager. And the person acts as a role model and mentor to the residents. So whatever goes on, whatever they're doing, the residents hopefully will emulate good stuff going on in the house. The manager also follows the house rules, maintaining full-time employment. The democratically run Oxford, they're big. There are, I think, over 17 houses, 1,700 houses nationwide right now. God bless them. If it's working, that's great. They keep their rent down too, but it's a different type of thing. What we're seeing is a lot of the houses with management, they're running great too. So we don't want to make any calls like who's doing a better job. We couldn't do that really, but I think a lot of folks that get into the business now, they're choosing the model with a house manager that lives there 24/7, 365. Next slide, please. Okay, here's an interesting one: non-compliance and eviction. So there's consequences for breaking the house rules. The residents learn responsibility for their own behavior. And if something happens and it's in your agreement, again, this is all in the agreement, you're going to keep your life real simple. And it's like I told employees in a past life, when there's a problem, we go right to the policy manual. I didn't fire you. You fired yourself. Okay? We asked you to reread your policies. You signed it. You said you understand it. So if something happens, you got to take ownership. That's consequential. So it's usually on a case-by-case basis, except for severe infractions that may result in immediate eviction. Removal of rewards or privileges, maintain same chore until done adequately. That kind of, I hate using the word punishment. It's more of a trying to change behavior, help somebody change behavior. But if the person continues to break the house rules, that's going to result in an eviction. And when somebody's evicted, they're going to leave. 99% of the time, they're going to leave willingly. If somebody's in relapse, they're going to leave. It's a given. They're not going to want to sit on your room in your living room and drink and smoke pot and snort cocaine, or you know the rest. They're just not going to stay there. The peer pressure alone from the other residents that are trying to change their life is monumental, and they couldn't even stay in that environment for 5 minutes. Now we have heard of a story where somebody, they called it a squatter, where the person would not leave and he was drinking and he didn't pay rent for 8 weeks, and the other guys in the house were very upset. So you're going to lose morale if you don't nip this in the bud. So they called the police department, and the first shift came in, and they told the manager that if the manager touched his belongings, they would arrest the manager. Well, that didn't make any sense to us. Now, second shift, they called the police department again, and two other officers came over, and they had a totally different light on this. They looked at the client. They said, "You're under the influence," and he said, "Yep." And he said to the manager, "Where's this person's agreement?" And he said, "It's right here." And the police officer held it in front of the person and said, "Did you sign this?" "Yep." "Did you understand that if you drink, you can't stay here?" "Yep." He goes, "Pack your stuff and get out." So what that was is you have a police department that wasn't sure internally what to do. So that was a great opportunity for the Housing Coalition here to call the police department and start working on a relationship and ask if you can come down there and slate a day where the coalition and the owners of the house, a couple of them, go in there and explain how all this stuff works. And then they go, "Oh, okay, cool." So it's not going to happen that often where you're going to get somebody that's not going to move out and just stay there. The pressure is too great from the rest of your residents. It's just too much. Next slide, please. So if somebody's evicted, they break promise to stay clean and sober. Resident usually, I just said that, they usually leave on their own. It may require immediate eviction. Okay. The homeowners often assist resident in getting treatment for alternative housing. Now, you can't stay here if you're drinking and drugging. You know, if you want to go to treatment, a couple of us will jump in the car and we'll take you over to treatment center or ER or something. And but you can't stay here. Well, where am I going to stay? It's 5 degrees outside. Well, I don't know if the shelter's full. You better call them. But you can't stay here. At some point, the resident has to take charge. They have to make that change, and we know it's not easy. We know all about addiction. It's not easy, and we know relapse is very common, especially early in recovery. Next slide. Thank you. So, you know, there's things like changing locks and moving out all furniture from room. If it's your furniture, I think I'll scratch this bullet right here because you don't have to do that. And the homeowner should have a strategy in place to deal with difficult evictions, such as the local police department. You know, if you really needed to call them. If somebody has illicit drugs and you tell them, "You're forcing my hand to call the police," I'll bet you a dozen Krispy Kreme donuts that they're going to probably leave or run out the front door. So Again, this is pretty basic stuff, but it's important to know. Location, location, location. Where are you going to put this house? Well, all these things are important. You want it in a busy area, where there's employment, where there's a bus line. A lot of folks don't have a car yet. They're still working off that DUI ticket, so it might take a year or two before they get their license back. So they rely on public transportation. Know your local providers, social services, things like that. Proximity to 12-step, faith-based, and other programs. Again, employment opportunities, the bus route, so on and so forth. And adequate parking for registered and insured vehicles. If you have clients, residents with a car, make sure that there's a license plate on that car, because if not, in no time at all, you'll get a knock on the door probably from someone from City Hall asking why the car is not registered. And they must be insured also. Next slide, please. So you're thinking about your structure and layout. Your floor plan design is important. The new residents move into a double room. I mentioned this earlier. To avoid isolation, and the single room will be available. It could be available as resident continues in recovery. 2 or 3 floors to accommodate 10 to 12 residents. And I did say earlier, 5 persons per bathroom. It could get pretty crowded in the morning and the evening. 3 or 4 single rooms and 3 or 4 double rooms. Your common areas are your kitchen, living room, and dining room. The living room does need to have a television. That's the only room that does need a television. And the manager does not have to get involved in what the folks are watching each night. The residents have to work it out to understand what they're going to watch each evening on television. They're not going to have a lot of time. They're going to be working, hopefully, all day. They're going to come home, clean up, get dinner ready. Then they got to think about getting to their meetings. And, some of the agreements are 5 meetings per week. So the condition of a home, renovation of dollars will not be available. You're not going to have a lot of money. So you want to know, get to know some folks, or you want to know a plumber, a carpenter, somebody who has a floor business, those kind of things. There's a lot of folks in recovery that have a lot of skills that maybe you can tap into those folks. If you need electrical work done and you don't have thousands of dollars, maybe somebody can cut you a break, but use the licensed electrician. The bottom one here, research furniture liquidation companies. A lot of these hotels have nice furniture, so when they bankrupt or close or whatever, move businesses, a lot of that wooden furniture and a lot of it's nice stuff. I've witnessed dining room sets, vanities you can buy for the bathroom if you're redoing a bathroom, things like that. Very inexpensive. Bed frames, things like that, and mattresses, new mattresses, believe it or not, because they've had a backup inventory that they need to also sell. The time to purchase the home, well, the winter months provide the highest occupancy. That's a given. It's pretty cold out there. I can't live under the bridge or on the beach anymore. It's too cold out. And the optimal time is just prior to the start of winter and getting your house ready to open. And allow time to prepare for all that. It takes a few months to get it ready to go. But the winter time, I get about, because we have the recovery housing website, findrecoveryhousing.com. I get on the average 45 to 50 calls per week in the winter. And actually right now, summer, I'm still getting 25 to 30 calls per week for folks coming out of treatment center, folks coming out of the Department of Correction system, looking for a safe place to stay that supports recovery. So it's this business is not going away. It's actually getting bigger, and there's a huge need. Next slide, please. So let's talk about your marketing strategy. Develop community contacts. Tell everybody in the world what you're doing. Once your house is ready to go and you're open, tell everybody what you're doing. You can make a real simple brochure online. You could make your own business cards and keep them with you because everywhere you go, you want to drop some off at the local treatment place, rehab places. Uh, Drop some off at the police department. There's bulletin boards at grocery stores. You could put things up there. Tell everybody. And another really good uh, advocate for your business is your residents. When they go to their meetings, um, they may meet someone that needs a place to stay, and they may know that there's one or two beds available, and they could, tell the person, hey, call our manager. We got an open bed. So that's another great way. But word of mouth is really good stuff. And you really want to work on that reputation of being the best recovery home in your community. And that will get around real quick, word of mouth in the recovery community. Like it says here, build by word of mouth. You could also list your home on our website, findrecoveryhousing.com, for $30. So that's $29.99 per year. And your house will be viewed quite a few times. The website itself is a nationwide site. It gets over 150,000 views per year. Next slide. Some of your friends are Americans with Disabilities Act, Fair Housing Agreement or Amendment. And there's another one I want to add is Health and Human Services. Their acronym is HHS. Health and Human Services has got a great article that you can find on your favorite search engine. It's called People in Recovery Have Rights. And they really do. And they talk about housing in there. I think it's about a 17-page article from HHS. People in Recovery Have Rights. And it's true. You can't discriminate. People cannot discriminate against people in recovery. Uh, to open a house or for people moving into a house. Now we deal with a lot of NIMBY cases, not in my backyard. We've all heard of NIMBY, and it's really tough. And what we do is try to go down to City Hall and shake and do a meet and greet and shake hands and say what's happening, and try to educate folks that this is not those people on the dark side that are going to hurt your family and steal your gas and take all the food out of your refrigerator and hack your computer. No, that's not true. So people, the general public really needs to be helped along here, educated, if you will, on who, people in recovery are. But unfortunately, the press gets a hold of an overdose in a recovery house, and it's a shot heard around the world, and it's no secret. We get them, and we try to educate the journalists. And I've offered my time to many newspapers, and they'd rather not have me in. They'd rather just write a story that's all doom and gloom and wants to make statements like recovery houses don't work. Now that's not true. And you and I know that's not true. There's some great houses out there, great agencies. Unfortunately, there are some folks who are in it for the money. Having said that, there's nothing wrong with making money, but their focus is totally the dollar and not the person's recovery or their health and welfare. You also want to avoid discrimination issues. Whatever you say to one client, if you're talking about rules and regs and policies, make sure you do the same across the board to all your residents. And that'll keep you free and clear from any discrimination issues. So most of your stuff's going to be on paper anyway, and you'll have your template, your contract agreement. So there should be no worries there, but we like to remind folks, whatever you're telling one person, make sure you're saying the exact same thing to the next person, resident, okay? And that's pretty much that bottom bullet. Next slide, please. Zoning. Before you purchase real estate, or if you did already, oh well. Check on your City Hall's website. You don't have to go marching down to Town Hall, City Hall, and say, hey, we're opening a recovery house in 2 months. You don't have to do that. What you might want to do is go on their website, your local City Hall, Town Hall website, and look for, their zoning, and look for also the building codes for single family if you're single home, because a lot of these places, what we're finding is even though they have the capacity and it's a single home, it's a large single home, they put 10 beds, doesn't matter men or women, there's 10 beds in the house. It has the capacity, but the town says you could only have 6. Now in Connecticut, 6 beds. In Connecticut, every town is different with zoning and building code. Every town is different zoning. So do a little bit of homework and check it out. And there's this thing that we have here is no more, quote unquote, no more than 6 unrelated people can live in a single dwelling. Now, there's nothing in their manuals at City Hall that say recovery housing. What they do have is boarding house, but you're not a boarding house, okay? You're not a boarding house. So do your homework, check it out, look for building codes in single dwelling house if that's what you are. If you're a multifamily, definitely want to check out what your town, what your city has for zoning and codes, because you may be required to do some upgrades like a sprinkler system, and that could be tens of thousands of dollars to add a sprinkler system. And you may have to do things like variances, like a wheelchair ramp and all that, exit signs. And again, you're not a facility, you're not a hospital. You're a privately owned recovery home. So do your homework and make sure you find out what it is, because I had a gentleman in Connecticut. He put 10 beds. There was plenty of room. He got a knock at the door because some neighbors complained that there was one of these drug houses moving into their neighborhood. Again, you're dealing with NIMBY stuff here, not my backyard. So the complaints were meritless, but what it did is draw attention to the house by City Hall. And by having the meeting with them, the gentleman lost 4 beds. That's a lot of money. That could be his mortgage payment for the month. So do your homework. Next slide, please. I think we went over all these. Check town ordinances before you purchase. Okay. Health and safety codes, parking regs, any other things that may apply. Okay. Make sure it's real simple. I know, and I'm preaching to the choir sometimes on this one, but smoke alarms and carbon monoxide, CO2 alarms. Make sure you're in compliance. You could also get the fire code from the internet in your town, and it's pretty simple to be compliant with that. Next slide. So here's a little business info. Do you go sole proprietorship, LLC, limited liability, corporation, or nonprofit? This is totally up to you. Sole proprietor, I don't know if I would do that, because I think everything is directly lined to you. There's a direct line back to you. So for instance, if something terrible happened and someone died in your home, in your recovery home, I don't think you want to be sole proprietor. We don't want the law coming directly after your personal house and your personal property. So I would check this out with someone. Maybe you have a friend who's a lawyer or someone in the business, another recovery homeowner. Ask them. Limited liability, in our eyes, seems to be the way most folks are going when they register the business as an LLC. Nonprofit, there are a few, but in your tax exempt, and that all sounds great, but I'm sure there's a flip side to that, so be careful, because you are subject, as you know, to audits, and you need to make sure that every pencil and eraser is accounted for. And folks have gotten in trouble because they couldn't, produce proper reporting. So not to scare you away, but I would definitely do some homework on that before you register for business. Next slide, please. You may want to have, you may have a CPA now, an accountant. Have them look over your stuff. You may have a friend who's a lawyer. Have them look over your stuff before you turn the key. All right. Ask other homeowners for referrals, to the professionals. I know I'm kind of jumping ahead, but excuse me. I do this so many times a year, but it's fun. We get fired up. It's good stuff. But just, we want you to succeed. We want you to do it right the first time. So you're not spending tens of thousands of dollars fixing mistakes that take 3 to 5 years to fix. We don't want you falling into that net. So I think the best thing to do is seek other folks that are already doing this, who are seasoned pros. And if you're looking for that type of information, ask them. Ask them. And you could also ask us, ask me, and if I don't have an answer, I'll try to bird dog an answer and point you in the right direction to somebody who knows. Next slide. So when you're done and your house is ready to go, you can put your house on our website, findrecoveryhousing.com, for $29.99 per year. And like I said, that it gets over 150,000 now, we found out, views per year. And you have, once you're on it, you have 24/7 access all year. You can manipulate the site. You build your site right on the site. You create your own login and password. We do not see your password. It's a really cool thing. So if you have upgrades or empty beds, you want to do that. You have a garage you added on, you might want to put that in there. But all that stuff, when you're ready, you can put it on here for $29.99 a year. You could still, if you want, build your own website, but this is a lot cheaper for listing your house, and you will be part of a network that's nationwide. It's a nationwide site. Next slide. So you search the website by city and state if I'm looking for a place to stay. And the house listings will offer information, the rules, the eligibility, the funding available, methadone maintenance in Suboxone, does the house accept it or not? All that information is in each house individually. These are privately owned recovery homes that are listed on this website from here to California. Check it out sometime. Have a look, findrecoveryhousing.com. You also let folks, if you're faith-based or 12-step, some houses are both, and contact information, who to call, person's name, if there's a person, or a general phone number where they can call in seeking a place to live. This is what the home page looks like to the website, findrecoveryhousing.com. And you'll see the two blue buttons in the middle. Those are actual buttons. Need to find a recovery housing. So you would click on the one button that says search for a recovery house. When you're ready to list your house, that's the second button below. List your recovery house. You click on that and just follow the prompts. And when you're done answering all the questions and filling in the little bubbles, at the end of this, you can pay the $29.99 via PayPal. Everybody's familiar with PayPal. And it's really cool. It's safe. It's very safe. And then I'm the one that sees it. I get a generated email automatically from the system that says you've got a new account. I'll see who you are. Again, we don't see your password. We don't see your login. That's up to you. That's something that needs to be sacred to you. So keep that in a safe place. And then I approve. I look it over, make sure everything's done right, and with a click of a button, I approve it, and you'll be global in 24 hours. So I think if I go to the next slide, well, yeah, here's what's on the site. The bed availability, the photo of the house, the admittance criteria, contact info again, rent payments, the upfront costs. In Connecticut, what we're seeing is the average rent is $130 per week. That does not include food. And some of the upfront costs for me to move in, the owners are trying to work with folks early in recovery. Not to say that people in recovery don't have money. That's not true. There are celebrity rehabs, but we are not that. It's not, we do have folks in California that charge $4,500 a month, but it's more of a treatment setting. They get outside counselors that come in. They have a 5-star chef. They have yoga, they have swimming pool, they have massage, and they have a van that takes them to Rodeo Drive every Wednesday night for their mud bath, and things like that. So that could be really expensive, but just to let you know that that flavor is out there in the world, and it's really a trip. It's really a trip. But we're dealing with more of grassroots. 130 bucks a week. They don't feed you, things like that, and the upfront cost again is about 2 weeks rent. So that would be, anywhere from $300 to $500 to move in. That would be your down payment. Most of the houses have cable TV. They have Wi-Fi. They even have one copper line, one phone, because not everybody, we don't want to assume that everybody has an iPhone or there's still flip phones out there. It may take them a while to get their legs back and their sea legs on and get their life in order and get some money and then maybe purchase a phone again or for some their first phone. So yeah, not so a lot of these folks have a phone there, and of course they've got access on it, so nobody gets too wild with overseas calls, things like that, expenses. So again, my name is Ken Alagata, and I'd like to take a few minutes right now and ask all of you if there are any questions, and please keep in mind there are no silly questions. So I will sit here and look for anybody typing. Jacqueline's typing right now. Thank you. So let's see what she has for a question. And then I will repeat. I will read her question and try to give a good answer. And if not, I may have to work with her to find an answer. Jacqueline asked if I can make the slides available to refer back to. Here's what I'd like to do. I'm going to give all of you my email address right now. I'm going to say it here. And if you've got your pen ready to go, I'm going to give you my email address. And if you email me next week, the first half of the week, if you got time, there's no rush, I will email you the slides. So here's my email. It's really simple. It's lowercase. It's Ken, K-E-N, at symbol, ccar.us. Ken at ccar.us. And I will mail the slides. Claire is writing right now. Let's see what she has. Cindy and Barbie are typing. I mean, Cindy, Barbie. Okay. Okay, Claire says, what are your suggestions to deal with NIMBYism if all of the suggestions you've made have been done? City rep meetings, education, media, involvement, etc. And you mentioned no overnight visitors. I'm on board with that. What about moms, dads attempting to reunify with kids? Can they have overnight visitations if they have their own room? That's a really good question. So there, we got a couple questions here. My suggestions for the NIMBYism, because you do mention, you've been working with city rep meetings, education, media, involvement, etc. And what town or what state are you with, Claire? Because in Connecticut, um, again, there's no oversight, federal or government oversight. And, you probably already told these folks about ADA and Fair Housing Agreement, and they're trying to stonewall you. But I also want to answer, um, yeah, Ohio. Okay, we're establishing. All right, so Claire, you and we talked. I think we talked a month or so ago. Your meeting. Yeah, I hear you. I'm reading Claire's stuff here. It's difficult. Ohio's having a tough time with this. Let me get back to the other part too about families staying in your house to reunify. That's a nice idea. If you have the room, a little spot, if you have the room for families to stay, I think that's very nice. You're trying to reunify the family because not everybody's got money for a hotel. Cindy, are requirements to be ADA compliant and house different by state? That can be very costly. I'm going to try to read that. Are requirements to be ADA compliant and house different by state? Good question. That's a very good question. When you say it could be very costly, I'm not quite sure what you mean by that. Claire, get back to Claire. You're establishing your NAR to be a NAR affiliate so there's only one affiliate per state um, with NAR. And I know we talked about that on our call with Tom and the other gentleman there, your counsel there. We talked about NAR. NAR may have to fly in and sit down with the city and say, what's up, because it is discrimination. And I know Ohio has some different rules around this stuff. And I know locals don't care about the ADA or fair housing or discrimination. I know, I totally get it. I totally get it. It's a tough one. Wheelchair accessible, Cindy writes. Bathroom modifications for height or sinks, ramps outside. That's something, Cindy, I don't know where you're from, but that's another thing you might want to check. Um, in Connecticut, they don't have to have wheelchair accessible because I think they don't even have to let folks in. There's so many other folks. So I'm not sure how that works. And the whole bathroom modifications. South Carolina, Cindy. Okay. Jacqueline writes, in terms of discrimination, how do you handle referrals for sex offenders who are addicts? There's not a house that I know of yet in this state of Connecticut that accepts sex offenders. There's not one. Because I get calls from folks and they tell me right up front, and I can't refer them to any house here in Connecticut. There are no homes, recovery houses that I am aware of right now for sex offenders. And I struggle with that too. Where do they go? If they're addicts, where do they go? That's a tough one. Cindy says, other question on grace periods for rent and working with those who can't pay upfront costs until they get a job. How long if they can't pay rent or upfront before evict? We have a couple of houses around here that'll give folks a hand up, and they'll have an agreement with them where, if they promise to get a job in a few weeks, they're going to have to, pay down the rent that they owe. But that could be a slippery slope because they don't get a job. They get a few weeks out of you and they end up leaving, and now you're down a few weeks rent. Um, how long if they can't pay rent or upfront before evict? 30 days. I mean, that's a guess. That's a guesstimate, 30 days, Cindy. Okay, we have a couple folks typing. Just a second. Thank you, Cindy. We have one person still typing. I hope some of you got some takeaways from this. Again, if we don't have all the answers, please email me at ken@ccar.us, and we'll work with you to try to find an answer. We understand Ohio is going through a tough time. They were trying to, I believe, open a ladies' house, and they're getting a lot of flack from this certain neighborhood. They're really stonewalling, and if it's the same, folks, I believe it is. Maria's typing. Thank you, Cindy. Someone still typing? A couple folks are typing. Maria says, as a recovery coach, I've been working with some who run homes, but not called recovery house. I assist landlords with screening and have peer support visit homes to assist tenants with Department of Human Services. This has been a great webinar for me to assist landlords. Thank you very much, Marie. Yeah, we're trying to weave in the word recovery, try to get away from transitional living, sober house, halfway house. That's a DOC term. We're trying to tease in the word recovery, recovery house, women's recovery center, men's recovery house, men's recovery, things like that. Get the word recovery in there. But thank you. And you're a coach, Marie. Congratulations. Recovery coaches, we need them. We need a lot more. Thank you, Jackie. CSI is signing off. Thank you very much. Remember, folks, KEN, ken@ccar.us. Email me and I'll flip these slides back to you. We got someone typing. Thank you, Claire. Thank you very much. Whatever we could do to help. We got a little saying here at CCAR, transform people, transform people. We got to work together, right? We all have to work together on this. October 4th, go to Washington, D.C. Greg Williams, the filmmaker, young man in recovery. He produced the movie, The Anonymous People. If you haven't seen it, check it out. It's a good cheerleading movie, all about recovery. Well, they're all going to be there October 4th at the mall, at the DC Mall. Right now, there's a couple 100,000 people that'll be there, so check it out. The Anonymous People by Greg Williams. Thank you, Cindy. I think we're all done, folks. If that's it, feel free to sign off. It was a pleasure helping you today. I hope you got something from this. Have a wonderful afternoon. We hope to hear from you soon. Have a great day. Bye for now.